Let me read to you a passage from the 6th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 6 to 11. It's the Gospel for Monday of the 23rd week in Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, "On another Sabbath, Jesus went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the withered hand, 'Get up and stand in front of everyone.' So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, 'I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?' He looked round on them all and then said to the man, 'Stretch out your hand.' He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But they were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus." That's from Luke chapter 6, verses 6 to 11. What does it suggest to us? Well, it suggests things about Christ and about sin. Let us imagine the scene. It is a Sabbath day, and we are in the synagogue. Jesus is teaching. Knowing him to be the Son of God made man, as we do, let us place ourselves in spirit in that synagogue and gaze on Jesus as he speaks. We ought try to realize ever afresh that this man before us is the Creator God, he who is pure being and the source of all that is. He is God who has taken to himself a human nature, thus making himself a man like us in every way, except that he had no sin. It means that he acts like a man, for he is a man, and he is treated by many as a mere man. There he is, perhaps seated at the front. That he would have been seated is suggested by the fact that when he returned to his hometown of Nazareth and went into the synagogue, we read that he read the scroll and then sat down to speak. So there he is, a man in his early 30s, undoubtedly of most noble mien, full of grace and obvious truth. Little did the people realize it, but he was the greatest, the very greatest man of his age. The great Caesar was as nothing to him. Before he began his public ministry, and while in the wilderness, following his baptism by John, Satan had offered him all the kingdoms of the world, if he would but worship him. Satan recognized his unparalleled greatness. Mysteriously, the path he would take to bring all the peoples to glory was not that of other greats of the world. His path was to be humiliation, poverty, suffering, and finally death amid opprobrium. So here he is before us, speaking in the synagogue. With us are a mixed assembly. Of course, it consists of the people of the town. There are the obscure ones, the ordinary ones, the more important ones, and there are present even his enemies. I refer to the Pharisees and teachers of the law. Their notable characteristic, even before anything happens, is moral blindness. As ever, they, jealous for their position, which they sensed was being usurped by what they deemed to be this young know-all, they were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they watched him closely, we read, to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. Let us consider their attitude and response. A man was in the synagogue, listening to Jesus, whose right hand was ruined. Being his right hand, its paralysis may have been especially telling in this man's general helplessness. He was there, looking at Jesus and listening to his grand words of hope. Our Lord would have noticed him during his address, and presumably had every intention of healing him when he was finished speaking. The Pharisees and teachers of the law also saw that the man with the withered hand was there, and saw in this circumstance a special opportunity to put the new prophet down. If he cured him on the Sabbath, he would be breaking the Sabbath law of rest from all work. He could be exposed as a fraud and as one who did not respect the law of God after all. Behind this ruse was the profound reluctance and indeed refusal to accept the light. They hated the light and refused to come to it, and this too our Lord knew all too well. They loved their own position, and we read later in the Gospel that Pilate knew that it was from jealousy that the chief priests handed our Lord over to them. They were jealous for their position and spiritual power. So our Lord finishes, rises and steps forward. He will not only proceed to heal the man of his hopeless affliction, but he will endeavour to snap the bonds that are blinding his enemies. He will show them by his effortless supernatural power the absurdity of their contentions. So he addresses the Pharisees and teachers. I ask you, he says, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it? But no answer. They do not want to be overwhelmed in debate by this signal individual before them, and in public before the town to boot. Christ cannot draw them to converse with him on the matter before them, because they are intent on his condemnation, and nothing will lead them to accept his light. So, sovereignly and without hesitation, he directs the man to hold out his limp and useless hand. Silently and in an instant, the hand is restored. Remembering the quality of the wine our Lord changed from water at the wedding feast of Cana, we may presume that the hand of the man was restored to an exceptional strength and ease. But what effect did this action have on the enemies of our Lord? It had no effect at all. We read that they were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. On the one hand, our Lord's action shows the almighty power and mercy of God for the one suffering, and on the other hand, we have the spectacle of hard and unyielding sin. There are two diamonds, as it were. The one is the far larger, and it is absolutely lustrous. The other is small, dark, and very, very hard. It will continue on in its hardness. Let us sell all we have and go for the large one. That one is Christ. Christ the treasure in the field. Christ the pearl of great price. Christ who is our all.